My name is Carly Markovitz. I'm a principal with Rebel Payments, Mobility, and Insights. We're a little Dutch company focusing on mobility, payments, and data, as it implies. But I've spent the last 8 years or so working on a lot of exciting stuff in LA, including planning for the games, and I'm really excited to be here with this panel today and thinking about what we're going to be doing in the years ahead. As the panel's title describes, we're talking about transformational opportunities, and many of you have been excited and part of a lot of great conversations probably over the last 2 days, talking about these same topics. But if I'm being honest, the word transformation feels a little eerie right now amidst the times that we might be entering, and uncertain at best. And so I think what we wanted to do was start to get a little bit practical and pragmatic about what that means with this very esteemed panel that we have, what that looks like, how do we chart our course forward amidst some uncertainty, but also amidst some of these unprecedented opportunities like we have in these major events coming to the region. So I'm not going to do full introductions because these panelists are very well known and they will give their introductions themselves, but would love to just immediately dive in with a question for everybody. I'll start with Stephen here on the end to talk a little bit about who you are briefly and what you see as the mandate or charge of your organization over the next several years.
Hi everybody, Stephen Cheung. I'm the CEO for the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that was created by the LA County Board of Supervisors 43 years ago. Our job now, and also looking in the next 4 years, is to make sure that we have competitive industries here in Los Angeles so that we can actually have good jobs, good entrepreneurship opportunities, and good investment for the entire region, and making sure that the pathways are clear so that as we bring prosperity to the region, everybody gets a piece of that. Our motto is that it's a change of the old adage, rising tide lifts all boats, right? It's all good and all if you have a boat. If you don't have a boat, you will drown. Our job is to make sure everybody has a boat.
Laura. Hello, there we go. Laura Rubio-Cornejo, I'm the General Manager of the Los Angeles Department of Transportation, where I oversee a multidisciplinary team who's responsible for delivering on all things mobility within the city of Los Angeles. That includes the operations and management of our street network, bicycle infrastructure, our transit system. We operate the largest municipal transit system in the county, second only to Metro. We manage a large portfolio of city-owned parking garages and lots. And also for hire services, so includes dockless, bike share, we permit taxis, so literally all things mobility. If it has wheels or it moves, that's under my department. I would say for the next couple of years, it's really how do we advance those goals of mobility, safer streets, equity, making sure that everyone has equal access to safe, efficient transportation options, but also kind of not losing sight that the city will be hosting the games in a couple of years. So how do we keep everything going that we do on a day-to-day basis, but also preparing for the games, and happy to speak more to that as the panel progresses.
And Laura took many of the, oops. Am I got? Yep. Nope. Thank you, Laura. I have the pleasure of working with Laura, and you took many of the words out of my mouth. Randall Winston, the Deputy Mayor of Infrastructure for Mayor Karen Bass. That includes oversight of Los Angeles' Board of Public Works, the Bureau of Sanitation, Bureau of Street Services, Bureau of Engineering, Bureau of Contract Administration, and then Bureau of Street Lighting, the Department of Transportation, and then the mayor's representation on LA Metro. So transit, access, complete streets, everything in our public right-of-way. I think in addition to what Laura outlined, ensuring that LA delivers world-class city services. We have challenges on that front. If you walk out on the streets in Los Angeles, you can see them, but the mayor is at the fore of ensuring that as we approach world major events, that we are at the fore. Also, better planning for how we get there. That means reorganizing how our departments work together to deliver projects, to deliver results, making our streets safer, more walkable, more bikeable, and creating a long-term capital plan to do that.
Awesome. So excited to be up here with you all and lots to discuss. We're going to ping pong around a couple different areas, but I want to take it right back to Randall for a second because there's a lot that the city of LA is focused on beyond mobility. I think everyone can look around, anyone can see the agenda of the mayor and know, well, we've got some pretty urgent needs. So I'd love you to talk a bit about how you are seeing your charge around infrastructure and balancing the resources the city has, with investments like climate and transportation with this very important need and urgency around housing and homelessness and even some of the things we're going to need to be doing or you're thinking about doing as a city in the urgent times that are the weeks ahead.
Very good question. I think there's a lot of examples I could point to over the past almost 2 years here that the mayor's been in office to illustrate that. I'm going to, though, use Metro as an example of what I think has been a really all-of-government approach, pulling from the resources that we have and working across jurisdictions to partner with all entities in this region. So Metro, I think, illustrates this well. We have, for the past now almost 23 consecutive months, increased ridership. So advancing our goals of increasing transit and not letting up. But also contending with what we know have been major headwinds. We are in the midst of a housing and homelessness crisis. And so Metro became a vehicle through which there was a very public discussion around, well, as a transportation agency, how much should that body lean into serving those who ride the system who are unhoused and have a host of other needs. And the mayor has been very clear and really a leader on that front. What does that mean? It means bolstering the ambassadors on the system. It means establishing, as she did this earlier this year, creating a new in-house Department for Public Safety that adopts a comprehensive strategy for both addressing some of the mental health and social services needs, as well as increasing ambassadors and armed law enforcement to address the public safety needs, both in terms of the actual needs and the perception of folks feeling safe, which again increases ridership. And also housing, making sure that we are utilizing Metro's underutilized properties in and around stations. This is forming joint development agreements throughout the city of Los Angeles. Soon we'll open up, I think, 2,000 units here in the coming year in North Hollywood, and there have been many more examples of that. And so it's working with other folks to make that happen. Of course, the Metro board consists of many others in addition to the mayor. And I think it wouldn't have been possible to achieve each of those things without strong partnerships and relationships across the board.
Awesome. Well, speaking of partnerships, we know we have a lot to do in the coming years. And Laura, pitch this one to you because you have been working quite a bit now in your role over planning for the next 3.5 years. The time keeps ticking away for 2028. Major milestone. We got plenty more to do before, during, and after, of course. But maybe you can talk a little bit about the partnerships and collaboration that LADOT is engaged with on that front in the infrastructure space. And what are the priorities for you? What do you see as most critical to get done in those couple years?
Sure. So I think just starting kind of big picture, working really closely with Metro, with SCAG, with Caltrans, and making sure that we're all on the same page and delivering the infrastructure that's needed and supporting one another in that realm. So everything from developing, and I know it's called something else, but developing kind of a more robust transit system to supplement Metro's rail system to get people around as we plan out a transit-first games experience, to addressing the games route network and upgrading technologies so that Caltrans's Transportation Management Center communicates with LADOT's ZATSAC Center, communicates with Metro's RIT system, and then also making sure that we're thinking about on-the-ground infrastructure. So for me, what that means specifically is really making sure that someone's experience getting to a games venue is one that is safe, one that is intuitive, and one that is efficient. And so really thinking about what that experience looks like from the moment the person gets off the bus, gets out of the train station, and how are they going to get to the venue in a way that is not just all those things that I just said, safe, efficient, intuitive, but also one that is an experience in and of itself, and how we leverage all of the assets Los Angeles has to offer, whether it's its diversity, its culture. And so really working internally now within the city family, working with other departments that might not normally be part of the first last mile experience, pulling in libraries, pulling in Department of Cultural Affairs, pulling in other departments to say, what can we do to leverage your assets, your programming, so that getting to and from the venues are an experience, and so that when people leave the games venue, they don't just go home. They stick around, they shop, they dine, but they also get to experience Los Angeles and what makes us so great. And then there's a third leg to that coordination and collaboration, and that's with the other venue cities. And we're starting to kick that off so that we make sure that as people get to the games venue, that experience, that first last mile experience, the venue approaches experience, is consistent across the board. So irrespective of whether you're attending an event in Los Angeles, in Inglewood, in Pasadena, the spectator knows exactly what to expect. But there's this underlying commitment to ensuring that anything we put in the ground is accessible from the get-go, that it's not an afterthought. And so we're incorporating that as a key principle to our planning, and that it's also a legacy, keeping in mind that the games are just a couple of weeks. We want to make sure that anything we invest in is a leave behind for those Angelenos that will continue to live here and can enjoy from that infrastructure.
That's great, and I think you hit on a really key piece, which I'm going to eventually get to you, Stephen, but I got to bring it back to Randall for a second, because this piece about accessibility is kind of fundamental, right? If we look around our streets, they could be better. That's all I'll say, right? So when we think about inclusivity as a baseline for what we want to offer when we welcome the world to our region, and honestly, far before that, I hope, what are we thinking about? How are we as a city starting to offer opportunities to accelerate investments in accessibility and prioritize that across the departments that you are overseeing?
Very good question, and I will echo what you said. It is this is the first time LA is hosting the Paralympics, as you know, as everyone here knows, and we need to plan for the Paralympics first, right? Our city has to be not just ready, but we can do more than ready. Had an opportunity to go to Paris during the games and saw many of the things that they did, well, but also, and they themselves shared this in candor, things that they could have done better. So we're taking notes. To your point, though, how we're getting prepared. So a few weeks ago, the mayor did sign an executive directive to streamline capital planning and project delivery in the city of Los Angeles. You all know there has been much written about the city's backlogs when it comes to the core basic components of our streets and our rights of way, our sidewalks, our access ramps. We've had challenges for years. One of the, I think the reason for that, at least from I think where we sit, where the mayor sits, has been a lack of vision for the city's infrastructure. How we plan for and deliver and maintain the basic parts of our right of way over the long term, and not just on a year-to-year basis where we're rushing to fund the shiny new and good project and maybe not paying as much attention as we should to the basic components that make our streets walkable, livable, and increase people's quality of life. We're starting that right now. It means streamlining the groups that have worked across the board, across the city's departments, including LADOT, and our budgets from here on out will reflect that. The proof will be in the pudding, as they say, and so I know there is much work to do. There have been plenty of good friends and advocates who I work closely with who said, are skeptical in a good way, because LA has, a history here that's been challenging. But we are committed. The mayor is committed, and we're excited actually to, I think, bring our streets to where they need to be.
Awesome, that's great to hear. Well, more to come on the delivery side of things, but I do want to give Stephen a chance to talk a little bit about too, right? We've got concrete and steel are a nice part and an essential part of what we're doing, but the thriving ecosystem that is Los Angeles is a lot about, who is here and who we attract to be here. And so I'd love you to talk a little bit about the thinking around kind of the inclusive ecosystem that we're trying to enable before, during, after these major events. How do we attract businesses to come, and how do we keep businesses here thriving?
Oh, I think for the Los Angeles region is such a thriving economy already, and I think the thing that makes us strong is our diverse, not only the diverse population, but diverse industries that are located here. One of the things that we're looking at is that I think there's so much attention paid to LA 28, which is fantastic, right? It's going to be transformative. But to some of the discussion points already said, the Olympic and Paralympic Games is going to be 2 in 2 weeks. It's going to be a month. But before that, we have FIFA World Cup. We have the Super Bowl. We have NBA All-Star Game. We have US Open. We had the Breeders' Cup. And we're going to be having US Open Championship for men and women coming back in 2031, 2033, 2039. We are candidate city for the World Rugby Championship 2031 and Women World Rugby Championship 2033. These are major global events that will be happening, again, with or without the Olympic Games and Paralympic Games, so it's going to be huge for us. Then you tie that in with the 11 professional sports team that we have. By the way, we just added a new professional sports team, if you don't know. The Rugby Football Club of Los Angeles just opened up operation. So now we are the nation's #1 sports entertainment center for the next decade or so, if not more. And that's one of the reasons why we're able to win the bid, is because we don't have to build any new infrastructure. So looking at the infrastructure, when the major events are not here, and when we're not playing our World Series, winning games, we have Taylor Swift and Beyonce coming and selling out concerts, or BTS, right? So all these different things are opportunities. If we tie it all together, it's not about the 28 Olympic Games and Paralympic Games. It's about the sports entertainment industry. As a whole, these are billions and billions of dollars of the contracts that will be issued, not only when it comes to T-shirts and hot dogs and beer and food, right? But it's also the technology. Take this mobile entry, facial recognition technology. Who's going to control the data access, environmental sustainability, recycling, water station. Like all these different things are billions of dollars will be spent over the next few years. So with all that said, we want to make sure that our communities and the diverse businesses here are actually getting a piece of that. A lot of people don't know this, but 94% of all LA County companies have less than 20 employees. 94%. So how do we make sure that these small businesses are actually able to contract and get a piece of the billions of dollars that will be spent? Right now, I think there's a lot of hope that they're going to be able to bid and win a contract with the LA 28. However, when you think about LA 28, they're not going to be buying, a few items, right? When they buy, they're going to be buying in bulk, millions of T-shirts or straws or whatever it is. And our small businesses currently may be able to produce 2,000, 10,000. So they're having this expectation that they're going to win. So unless you actually create the system for them to scale up or create joint venture that can actually meet the demand, you're actually setting up false expectation. So I think this is where inclusive growth is going to be very important, that we actually have the plan, we have the training capacity, we actually outreach and actually engage with the community where they're at to see what they're able to do, then identify where the potential buyers are going to be, connect them all together and actually create a pathway for them to win. That is basically what we're hoping we're able to utilize the Olympic Games and Paralympic Games to really leverage this so that we have this legacy that we can leave behind for these small businesses and our diverse owned businesses to actually thrive. Because if they're not thriving, our economy is not going to be doing well.
So I feel like what you're describing is super helpful, right, for the partners that you even have on this table, right? So maybe back to you again on this idea of collaboration and maybe these intersectional partnerships, like doing things differently, bringing people to the table that aren't usually at the table that, might partner with the city or partner in infrastructure. How do you see your LAEDC's opportunity there to bring together a multifaceted tapestry of people to change the way we do things?
Well, we're very fortunate that over the last few years, we're given a couple test cases to do this. The U.S. Department of Economic Development Administration a few years ago issued a new grant called the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. It's $1 billion for the nation to compete for the economic development plan. And what they're asking is for a collaborative approach to basically submit the application so that you can get funding to create projects that are going to be transformative for the region. When it came to LA, they had a really honest conversation with us. Like, LA, you guys need to get your act together because usually you submit about 35 to 50 applications and you cancel each other out. Can't you be more like Missoula and submit one application? wait, you're comparing us with Missoula? Do you know we have 10 million people, our GDP is about $900 billion? If we're a country, we are the size of the 20th largest economy in the world, right? We speak 224 languages, we represent 140 nationalities, we have 88 different cities, over 100 incorporated regions. We can't submit one application. Well, you're not gonna win. So what we did is we start working on building a couple coalitions, and we were able to submit 3 applications and join a lot of the effort. We won phase 1, we didn't win phase 2. And then later on, utilizing that exercise, when the state of California actually issued the California Jobs First Challenge, $600 million will be allocated. 13 regions, and LA got our own region. We're able to now bring in 200 partners to basically start doing this application. That partnership has grown to 800 partners. So we've seen the power that's behind it, and now we're able to understand the difference between the needs between Pomona versus Pacoima versus Palos Verdes, I'm listing all the P's, versus Pasadena, right? But how do you actually work very closely with them all together? And so this is basically, we see that there is a need for an intermediary agent that's able to basically bring in public, private, nonprofit, academic, labor, environmental, community stakeholder groups all coming together for that common cause. That common cause is getting more resources for this region. But if we're only fighting for a small piece, we're fighting for, $50,000 when we could, and we should be fighting for a nation-sized kind of piece. We should be fighting for $100 million. We should be fighting for $1 billion, right? So I think this is where the opportunity lies for us, and where hopefully LADC, and along with a lot of other partners, are doing the exact same thing. Look beyond our individual needs and basically collectively utilizing the games as a way to catalyze us working more closely together.
That's great. So you mentioned funding, and I think it's only fair, and given the week and time we're living in, to just address this head on, which is funding is going to be a really important and really sticky issue for us in Los Angeles and California, given what happened last week. So that's all I'll say. Randall, to you, how are we going to balance this honest tension between protecting our communities in Los Angeles and making sure we have funding to do all the things we need to do?
Very good question. And obviously, last week kind of came very much as a shock, but at the same time, we had at least a history to look to prepare ourselves and to use that to kind of, I think, be prepared for the funding that we currently have, and then the funding that we hopefully will be able to secure. What do I mean by that? So almost immediately, and certainly throughout the course of this week, we've looked across all of our city departments and bureaus. What are the grants that are outstanding? What are those grants for which we've signed agreements, for which we've not signed agreements, where there is still work to do in the remaining time of the Biden-Harris administration to ensure that if those funds might be at risk of being lost for whatever reason, we can shore that up. Now, Mayor Bass, as you know, served in Congress, has many strong relationships with existing secretaries, cabinet members, and those calls are happening now. That work is now, and we will continue to do that work. That being said, we know the new administration to come, and we need all partners, and this gets to Stephen's point, all partners at all levels. And so we are going to have to work to nurture those relationships where they can be nurtured in order to support the events that are coming to this city and the projects, the items, the actions for which we need the federal government support. We'll draw lines where lines will need to be drawn. Just a couple of days ago, the mayor, urged our city council to urgently work to declare Los Angeles a sanctuary city. Work will continue to happen where it needs to happen to uphold and protect Los Angeles's values and what we stand for as a city. But at the same time, partnership is a through line. And we'll have to find those opportunities to partner in order to get the resources that we can.
Thank you. Continue the good fight. And I think when we think about what we're going to be doing, right, maybe we could call this a crisis. We can call it an opportunity. But when we think a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, I like to think it's an opportunity to radically prioritize. And that does, in a way, offer an opportunity to get energized. And one of the things, having worked on the games planning for the last 7 years or so, was thinking about our legacies. And sure, we're getting fairly close to that time. But I want to put this to Laura, because one of the things that I'm really excited about, and I still believe we have the ability to do, is reimagine our streets. Lanes as a legacy. And I really wanted to hear from you, looking under the hood, how is LADOT thinking about that? What does that mean to you, and what kind of support and collaboration are you trying to achieve in order to ensure that could be a reality by 2028?
So I'll just say, I think when I had the opportunity to join the city of Los Angeles, one of the things that was so exciting to me was the opportunity to leverage the games for just transforming, not necessarily, I won't say not necessarily, but not just transforming our streets, but really using that as an opportunity to change the way people travel and move about the city. And so a lot of the work that I'm focused on, recognizing that we're less than 4 years away. And so anything that is transformative that we want in the ground, we have to be planning it now, and it has to be shovels in the ground within 2 years if we want to leverage that as a way of starting to change the way people behave and travel in time for the games, and to make it lasting and have that be a legacy that goes beyond the games, which is really what I'm hoping. For me personally, I won't speak for the administration, but for me personally, what I hope the games legacy is that people start to change the way they travel and recognize that they can get about the city in a different way, but that requires that we implement infrastructure. So given whatever finite resources we might have for whatever reason, it's really reprioritizing and realigning what our priorities are within the department, and to a certain extent how we coordinate and partner with the Department of Public Works and other departments within the city, which Deputy Mayor Winston has already spoken to under ED9. But it's also working with Metro and advancing bus-only lanes. It's making sure that we're leveraging technologies that help supplement resources we have within the city so that we can be more efficient and more effective, not just in what we implement, but how we enforce it, and making sure, for example, bus-only lanes, that they really are for buses, and so that we're able to remind folks that, no, that's not a lane you should be parking in, and there's a reason for it. And so in addition to the reminder, how do we, I always kind of put on my mom hat, how do you remind someone like, no, that really is not good behavior, it's unacceptable. And so how do we do all of that in time for the games so that when the games are here, we all are traveling with the same goal of this being a transit first games, taking transit. And I'm not going to ignore that there are those people who will refuse to give up their cars. Awesome. Have fun getting to the games venue in your car. And so it's thinking about what else do we do to protect the neighborhoods so that those individuals that refuse to give up their cars know that they will not be able to park in those residential neighborhoods. And so all of that is stuff that we are starting to implement now with our partnering agencies, with other cities, but it's all really leveraging existing resources at the moment, knowing that that window to secure any additional funding that we would have in our hand in time to implement is either quickly closing or has closed.
Carly, can I jump into something you said earlier about funding and also opportunity? I love how Randall and the mayor's so optimistic and reaching across the aisle. That's always been her approach. However, looking at the previous Trump administration, I think what we can look at, especially right now with the nominees for some of the cabinet position, is very clear what the direction would be. As a county, as a region with 68% diverse population, 49% Latino, with a lot of different things that will be happening, I think we can hope that we can build this partnership and secure some of this funding, but we need to make sure that we take advantage of this crisis as an opportunity to secure new partnership. What we saw during the last administration was that a lot of international partners were not able to access DC the same way. And a lot of our State Department diplomats actually left the administration and pursued other options. And in doing so, we lost so many decades of diplomatic relationship that was very important to us. But what happened was that actually LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York became the beacon and became the international center for international partners to come directly to us to create those opportunities. I think we can actually leverage that once again and actually utilize the games as a way to bring the world together, to showcase what we are as a city, what we are as a region, and how do we make sure that the business opportunities are available to everyone. So that's a really great opportunity that I think that we need to invest in, but we can't just basically sit and hope for those international partners to know who we are, because right now we're being outmarketed by a lot of the other regions, right? You've all heard Texas and Arizona basically saying, don't do business in Los Angeles, come to Texas. It's our turn to come together and bring, again, Pasadena, Pomona, all the P's together and all the other ones together, so that our 88 cities and entire region coming together as a united front. We keep having these little adages and approach. Another thing that we're trying to do with LADC is to build a coalition of one so that we can have an economy for all. So if we can come together, I think we can be a lot more powerful, but there's a very unique and very rare chance for us to take advantage of that. The time is now.
That's a great point, and I would love to ping it back to you, because we talked about some interesting examples. Like we don't, like you said, we're not reinventing the wheel. This has happened before, but this opportunity has also come before, and we also know how to do this in other industries, right? Like we don't have to reinvent or create a wheel in transportation. We can use, examples. So maybe Stephen, can you share a bit about how you could see replicating models that have worked for LAEDC, or attracting new business building coalitions, attracting private funding that could fill some gaps we might have?
Last year, in February or so, we launched a new campaign called the Grow LA Bio Initiative. The bioscience sector is such an important sector here in Los Angeles. However, when you ask the international community or even national, when you think about life sciences and biosciences, what do you think of, right? Boston, San Francisco, San Diego. It's never in LA. Did you know that we have over 100,000 bioscience jobs located right here? Average wage in that sector is 104,000, average. So, and about 64% of those jobs, you don't require a 4-year degree. So that means that you can actually graduate from a community college program and go into a bioscience job and actually get $74,000 as an entry-level job. That's a good bet for us, right? So, but the thing is, we don't really have this entire ecosystem the way that we have Hollywood and entertainment as an ecosystem. So last year, LADC worked together with a number of different partners, including Bioscience LA, LADOT Institute, Biocom, and also the LA County Department of Opportunity to come together and create this Grow LA Bio Initiative. The goal is to basically create a partnership between public, private, nonprofit, academic, labor, stakeholder groups, and community, so that we can create an economic blueprint specifically for that sector, a step-by-step guide. Who's going to do what, and how do we grow this sector together? If we're successful in that approach, then it becomes very clear that this entire industry has a network to support each other. So we have a 5-pillar approach. We have research, we have industry cluster development, we have business assistance, we have international trade, and workforce development. All these different components of economic development, we're applying towards this in one industry. That is already moving forward very quickly. We're creating this economic impact report that will be released soon, talking about why we need to focus on this effort. If we can do the same thing for the sports and entertainment sector, tying in all the games, tying in all the sports teams, so that we actually have this entire ecosystem, the world will be coming to us looking for that opportunity. The world will be investing in us. We can bring more of these opportunities. And by the way, besides all the things that I talked about, one last thing I forgot to mention and bring in is really important, is esports and gaming. Right? That is actually tied in with our gaming sector, because people are selling out stadiums for people watching people how to play video game. I don't understand it, but it's a lot of money, right? And the other thing, when it comes to technology, that I was flabbergasted, BTS, the boy band, and from the Korean boy band, when they perform, there are these light sticks that they sell for $80 a pop. Why? Right? Wow. But when boy band number 1 is dancing, they point over there, and all of a sudden, all the light stick turn red, and everybody goes crazy. Again, technology, Wi-Fi connection, like all these, and then they actually get the mobile data. They know who these people are, so they can advertise them afterwards, right? that's where I think if we unite, right, these are the things that people don't think about, but if we have this industry cluster and we're able to create this entire synergy of these partnership, and LADC would love to be able to work with all of you to bring together the sports entertainment sector to basically support also the transportation side as well, because you need to unite all of that as well. So these are the things that are happening already, and it can be replicated pretty easily.
Okay, you heard it here first, people. Everyone needs to reinvent the BTS light stick before 2028, all right? No pressure. But in all seriousness, though, it is helpful what you're saying is like what we need to do is get clear about what we want to see, right? If we're going to bring and attract this investment, what do we want to do, right? Many of us have had many conversations about this for many years. But let's just use this great audience that we have here, which is, you know, a global audience of technology vendors and suppliers and services who is very interested, probably listening to all of you, to do business here. So we heard some great things about, you know, Metro's unsolicited proposal process, and that has been an ongoing model for us to think about more trying to attract ideas. So maybe for Laura and Randall, could you share a bit about what are some of the things that you might like to see unsolicited or otherwise from solving technology problems, solving some of the issues that you're seeing to deliver on some of those priorities you already talked about?
I'm going to just throw out one idea here associated with the games to come, but other major events. You know, and Laura touched upon this a bit, but this is sort of utilizing our public spaces throughout the entire city, all 15 council districts and beyond, perhaps as well, to create opportunities for folks who can't afford to go to the venues, can't maybe participate anywhere near the venues, but still experience the games, the event, in a way that is lasting and permanent. And again, spaces that we might not think of as your regularly utilized public spaces. So not just our parks and our streets, but I would call for ideas, partners, funds on that front.
I will say I have no shame in naming a first last mile corridor, you know, the Pepsi corridor. But beyond that, or you know, some other technology industry corridor. But I think there's lots of opportunities. And, you know, I spoke to how we're trying to be more efficient, more effective with how we manage our streets. I spoke a little bit at the top about our ADSAC Center. We are celebrating the 40th anniversary. It was the legacy of the 84 games. And so now, as 40 years later, we're looking at how do we prepare and how do we modernize that center for the games and beyond. I think there's opportunities there to leverage technologies that weren't around 40 years ago, whether it's AI, whether it's predictive software, whatever it is that can make our streets safer and operate more efficiently. But then there's also other opportunities as we look at how do we start managing all the different things that are on our streets. How do we do better with managing our very limited curb space? How do we do better with managing and tracking our dockless systems, our taxis, the autonomous vehicles that are out on the streets? All of that is within the same finite space. And so if we're looking at not just how do we manage how people are moving to and from the games, but how they travel, period. There's lots of opportunities for technologies to come into that space and to be invited into that space. And so what I'll say is don't wait for us to reach out to you. Come and knock on our doors and tell us what you have to offer, because when it comes to delivering the games, there is a plan in place, but we don't know what we're missing if you don't come and tell us that there's this opportunity, that there's this technology we may not have considered, that there's a different, better, more efficient way. Because in the public sector, well, we want to progress, you know, it is deliberately intentional and slow and methodical. And the private sector has a luxury of operating at a different pace and at a different level of investment. So please feel free to come and partner with us and don't wait for that invitation.
Can I make a request as well? I would like to see one app to rule them all, one app to bind them. In Paris,
I want to debate you on this. It's my favorite topic.
just at
Say
least
more,
it's
Stephen, please.
At least
please.
it's coordinated, right? So for the folks that went to Paris or any Olympic Games, when you buy a ticket to basically enter a stadium, you have to basically go through their app. But to your point, they're not going to buy all the tickets for all the events. So what if one day you're like, well, I want to watch another game, but I would like to go to an activation event. Councilmember Tim McCosker just announced the Croatia House is going to be in San Pedro. If you are a Croatian fan or community partner, you should know that there's going to be activation events watching the Croatian soccer team play at a certain point in San Pedro, so that you can basically take the public transportation that's going to bring you directly there. And by the way, these are the local food vendor that can provide you with amazing food, amazing drinks. And by the way, as you're moving forward, don't forget to buy your Croatian T-shirts that's manufactured locally in an LA company, right? That kind of information system that can basically unite us all, give that information for access. So something like that would be fantastic.
I love it. I will reserve my debate on the app, but the ideas are critical, and the idea of information wherever people are, I think, is critical. And layering this data, we like to describe it as a well-stitched seam. It doesn't necessarily need to be all one place, but there is an opportunity to integrate a lot more seamlessly. And I'm hoping, by the way, we will have, because I have to talk about payments, open loop payments, so that you will just be able to tap your bank card on the system by the time we welcome the world to LA, which Paris did not have. So there are things we will have that people hopefully will look to as a model for doing differently. But enough about that. I think we want to give the audience a few minutes for questions, but I do want to come back to, like, at the end of the day, the one word which we use a lot when we talk about special events, and that, especially the games, and that's legacy. And so maybe this should be a kind of rapid fire for you all. What is the one thing, right? What is the one legacy in what you do, what you want to see in Los Angeles that you would like us to leave after we're all said and done?
The boss says, you go first, you go first. I'll say mode shift. I think if we implement the infrastructure well enough, and if our partners at Metro are successful in coordination with the support of all of the other agencies and cities in implementing the supplemental bus system, and we're able to push out the communication and make that experience a good experience, then my hope would be the lasting legacy is that people will continue to take transit, will continue to jump on a bike, even if it's for just 1 or 2 trips every now and then.
A united region when it comes to access to procurement and other types of opportunity. Because right now, between the 88 cities, between the county, between Metro, that's a lot for a small business to basically get access to. And again, these small businesses can actually benefit so much and actually help our entire economy. So if we're able to start bringing together all the regions to start thinking together as a whole, as the LA County region, and then basically making sure those opportunities are directly available to the most disinvested communities that have never been given a chance, that would be absolutely wonderful.
I was trying to take my time to channel Mayor Bass here, and I think one thing I'll sort of step out to say is lasting, that is permanent, and I said this earlier on, improvements that are kind of from the bottom up in terms of their value to the community in every single council district in Los Angeles. Real, permanent, meaningful.
Well, this was amazing. Loved talking with all of you. Before we do official thank yous, I do want to see if we can see the audience, if there are any questions folks would like to bring to our panelists.
Thank you. It's great to hear that the city is now moving forward with Executive Directive 9 to streamline infrastructure and really have a long-range plan. The word streamlining often means reducing citizen or public involvement. How will the city make sure that that streamlining doesn't bypass citizens, and that the legacy, for example, given that we're broke, basically, the city's broke and looking for money to implement these improvements and these guest things, given that the public right-of-way is very sacred to many of us, it seems like the city may be willing to sell it off for billboards and digital advertisements in order to raise that little bit of money, which means that for a month of advertising revenues, our streets will be covered with ads for 20 years. So how do we balance the short-term needs with the legacy, which is not necessarily the streetscape we want to see when we talk about planting trees and having pedestrian-friendly environments?
A lot packed into that question. Thank you. So Executive Directive 9, I'll start kind of from the top, streamlining. The current budget process, as you've alluded to and as you know, is not very public in nature. There are not a lot of opportunities for public input or even transparency insofar as how it works. And so that's step number one, creating a process where we develop a long-term vision of the city for the budget. We will be incorporating new modes of community and external stakeholder input into that process. Now, what that looks like is still to come because that's actually baked into the order itself. First step, number one, we have our first meeting here before the year's end, is creating a governance structure to kind of articulate how all of our city departments come together to plan for, maintain, and deliver infrastructure in the right of way. As part of that process, and it hasn't been developed yet, is prioritizing what gets built and where. And this gets to kind of the, one of your other questions around, not having the funding. That is, we aren't broke, but it's a first of all kind of a common problem nationally that folks have challenges in meeting their basic infrastructure needs, sidewalks and what have you, and maintaining them. Yes, LA has maybe greater degrees of problems on some of those fronts, but it's not an uncommon problem. I think we've got to start by just better planning and then going through a decision-making process around what to prioritize over the long term. What that looks like is still to come. I'll also talk about funding. So you mentioned one way of funding. There will be, as part of the directive, the development of a host of funding strategies to recommend to the council and the mayor. I think that those funds need to take all kinds of scales, up to and including measures that we might need to pursue to get at our needs. I can't speak to what all those will be just yet because we haven't determined them. But I agree with you that the quality of our streetscape and of those who walk and bike on our streets is paramount. And that's going to look different in different neighborhoods. We're going to have to work with our council members to sort through that, and obviously our residents, neighborhood council groups, and those who make up our city. So a lot to come. There's a lot to do. We know it will be challenging, but we hope to come up with our first 5, 10, and 20-year plan all in one. By sometime next year as we go through the process of putting it together, and look forward to your continued input.
Thank you so much. I think over the last 2 days, there's been just so many incredible ideas floated around harnessing the energy of the upcoming games and really trying to leverage that for long-term good. And I'm just curious, thinking back to a kind of recent example of the city taking kind of pretty big swings in a short period and trying new things around COVID, thinking LADOT did slow streets, the city at large did alfresco outdoor dining as the way of meeting the current moment and trying something radically different. I think in those programs, I think while maybe they met the short-term need, that kind of permanent impact was is somewhat mixed. Some of them were discontinued or they just look fairly different. So I'm hearing a lot about wanting to make the potential improvements permanent, or at least leaving a positive lasting impact from these games. And I'm curious from whether it's a messaging standpoint, whether it's a community engagement standpoint, there's probably going to be cases where the city, the county whoever takes big swings again to meet the needs of these games. And how do we do that with infrastructure, with temporary activation of spaces, while still leaving the door open for long-term impact and trying to message to communities that, yeah, this is for these 6-week period, but like, wouldn't it be great if we had this long-term, and making sure that, you know, when the games are over, people don't just throw up their hands and say, well, I want to get back to my normal day-to-day life, and I liked the way things were, you know, a couple years ago.
So I'll start by saying, and I'm sorry, the light's blinding, so I'm just gonna look this way. I'll start by saying that if we're talking about behavior change, which I think is something you're alluding to, we know what works. And so I think we're past the point, given we're less than 4 years out, of saying, let's see if maybe we try this. You know, you mentioned al fresco. There's lots of businesses that have signed up to renew their permits to continue outdoor dining. And if you step outside today, like, why would you not want to be dining outside? You mentioned slow streets, but what I'll say, a program that has lasted far beyond what I thought it would last, is open streets, where we as a city continue to host every other month an open street event. And so when we're talking about how do we make sure that what we're doing for the games is lasting, I think it starts first with implementing the infrastructure that is needed in order to make sure that people feel comfortable and safe moving about their city. And so in this case, we're talking about really how you get to and from venues, but then how do we multiply that beyond in a way that is meaningful? So we know, for example, when we implement Vision Zero projects, they're effective, they work. We see traffic calming, we see crashes being reduced. For us, it's about how do we do that quicker, faster, more efficiently? And again, circles back to the Executive Directive 9. How do we work internally to be more effective in delivering infrastructure that's meaningful? And so the first part, and my focus in the next couple of years, is how do we develop that infrastructure that we know works, that we know draws people out of their cars? And then the second part is really focused on a TDM strategy, messaging, community engagement, encouraging people to move about their city differently in messaging. I'll say in my short time with the city, I've seen 2 examples led by Mayor Bass. One was a year ago, almost exactly, when the freeway burned down, and we asked people to travel differently to get to where they needed to go, particularly if it was in downtown Los Angeles. We saw huge shifts in how people were moving about the city, using transit, walking, working remotely. More recently, when we hosted in one night a World Series game and a number of other events within the same vicinity, same thing, led by Mayor Bass, move differently, take transit, take the Dodger Express. If you don't need to be in downtown, don't be in downtown. And we saw the public respond. I think what we'll need to do leading up to the games is a lot of that messaging, a lot of that encouragement multiple times, and then coupling that with infrastructure and programmatic and education campaigns that continue to push and emphasize that message. My hope when I say that, I hope that the lasting legacy really is mode shift, is that if we do it enough and start soon enough and have enough infrastructure and programmatic events in place, that at some point, by the time the games come around, it's just second nature to Angelenos, and that it lasts beyond the games.
Can I add one more component to that? That's a really good point, because I see the transition. Then it can't just be dependent on government and elected officials, right? They mobilize the conversation, but then the community need to take over. I think one good example is Ciclavia. I remember it was first created, it was, we were going to Bogota to learn basically what happened there, taking over as a pilot, starting with the mayor's office. Then basically it became spun out into its own nonprofit. Then the community really engaged it, and now it's been going for over 10 years. That system can be done, but it can't always just rely on the elected officials, because eventually they'll term out, and then what?
Right.
Any other questions? Looking closely here. Going once, going twice.
Hi, I'm
great.
Chris Chamberlain. I'm from London, as you may have gathered by my accent. And I just wanted to say, yeah, there are some challenges, and we had the games in 2012, but we regenerated a whole area of London that really wasn't great beforehand. You know, there were challenges, but you know, it got people off their backsides and to participate in sport again. So I know there are challenges, guys, but you know, you have a great opportunity to do things. Just to end on a positive note, yeah, there are things that need to be done, but embrace it. You know, people can participate in grassroots sports. New stadia can be built, and you know, maybe it's the behavioural change that changes how Angelenos move around your city. So good luck, and look forward to seeing the Olympics in 4 years' time.
If I can just say thank you for that. Thank you for the charge of good luck. And I will try to communicate too, even what Mayor Bass felt when she was in Paris and was able to have some, pretty frank conversations with Mayor Hidalgo of Paris around how they got to where they were. Because the thing that I should say clearly was just how inspiring it was. The transformation that took place throughout Paris, throughout the games, and what was happening in their arrondissements outside of the venues, activating spaces, the people who were brought in to experience sport, outside of the events themselves, was incredible. Incredible. The scale of it, the excitement, the energy. And I will say that in the next, not to foreshadow 2 months, but I think within the next few months, you'll hear more about that vision and/or goals from Mayor Bass to help galvanize some of that collective action and partnerships that I know we all are about, and we want to continue to see. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Echoing that, thanks. Another thing to think is London in 2012, after they're done, start sharing their best practices with the rest of the world, including LA. The reason why the city of Los Angeles now have Ramp LA as a system is because we learned from London and partners after it's created in terms of what happened there, so that small companies can basically register for these opportunities and procurement opportunities. So London's been fantastic. Can't wait until LA become that partner to be able to share our wisdom with other folks too.
Yeah, also just a model in every way, but the fact that you can almost distill the legacy in 3 words, right? Revitalize East London. It's so tangible, and I love that. I really think that's motivational for us, radical simplicity, let's get crisp and let's go do things. So thank you for that. I do see one more hand.
If I didn't ask this question now, it seems for those of us who are in business and are local, it's not clear the pathway to opportunities to support everything you're talking about. I'm for trees and many other things, and we're landscape architects, urban designers. So you don't have to. I mean, it just needs to be a little clearer, and we need to understand what the opportunities are and how to be part of the effort.
Agreed. We're asking for that too. Yeah.
On that note, I am going to keep that as an ongoing discussion, I hope, for the next 4 years, because I think everyone in the audience probably feels similarly. We're really excited to wrap up this fantastic conference, and I just want to thank you all and thank our esteemed panelists for this.